most of the year, your family, your job, your community takes center stage in your thoughts. But not now. Now it's fantasy football season, and the kids, the holidays, the boss all take a backseat to your waiver wire priority, a pending trade, or the health of your fourth running back. Let's feed the beast with some fantasy football talk.
And it is time for our fantasy football report here on the Morning Line on 92.9 The Ticket. We're joined on the phone lines now by Kevin Payne of RotoWire for our weekly fantasy football report, our waiver wire check-in. Good morning, Kevin. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Liam. What's going on?
I was just kind of checking to make sure you're all right after the Bills' loss.
I'm recovering. I don't know what I really felt the worst part about that was.
That it never happens?
Yeah. Was the long plane ride the players had to take from Arizona back to Buffalo, and now they have a bye week, and they've got a week to stew over it. Here's the one thing that came out of Buffalo over that, which I think is interesting, and that teams around the league should take notice of. Tre'Davious White had great position on that play, but Tre'Davious White is not 6'4". Gabriel Davis, who is on the sideline and is a wide receiver, is 6'4". He should have been on the play for that last game because all you got to do is knock the pass down. So that was one of those cases, and we've seen it in the past where there's a Hail Mary situation. Bring out your tallest player. There was a team years and years ago that was going to hire Wilt Chamberlain just to come and knock down field goal tries and have him sit in front of the post and just knock him down. I would go ahead and subscribe to some type of method like that when it comes to Hail Mary. So other teams in the league should take notice that bring your biggest players to knock the ball down on those type of situations.
All right, so let's talk a little waiver wire and fantasy football. Before we get into the waiver wire, the one question I have is there a most confusing player or team or organization for you in fantasy football? And by the ones you just can't figure out who they are, what they're doing, if you should play them or not. Is there someone who's the most confusing and confounding player out there?
A.J. Green, T.Y. Hilton, guys basically in the past that we've been able to trust for fantasy purposes, we haven't even found the end zone, and that people were taking in those middle rounds, and now there's no way you can even trust them. They should be on the waiver wire at this point. So the team that frustrates me the most right now is the Chargers. They have a good football team. Justin Herbert, how is he not starting from week one? He's a good football player. And I guess if you're a Chargers fan, you go ahead and say, look, we've got our franchise quarterback for the next 10 years, yet somehow this guy wasn't starting. This team, week in and week out, is playing in games that they seemingly should win. If you look, every game's been very close, yet the wins aren't there for them. I think the future's going to hold bright. And Anthony Lynn, I think he's one of those guys who's a really good coordinator, not necessarily a good head coach. So that would be the team that frustrates me, and those are a couple of the players that frustrate me as well for fantasy purposes.
We're talking with Kevin Payne of RotoWire, our fantasy football report here on the Morning Line. All right, so who do we hit on the waiver wire? Are there guys out there still left that we should be grabbing?
Absolutely. So kind of the fun player of the week, and I always say fun because for fantasy purposes, he's much better than he is in real football purposes. Jameis Winston. They're talking about Drew Brees. And what concerns me is not the rib injury, it's the collapsed lung. Mm-hmm. And so when they're saying he's going to be going out for 2 weeks, I have a hard time believing that. And I do have a medical degree. I'm not a doctor, but at the end of the day, I don't think a collapsed lung takes longer than 2 weeks to heal. So, Jameis Winston, and here's the big attraction about him. Number one, he'll go down the field. So Mike Thomas and Traquan Smith, all of a sudden their values get a lot better. And if you look at the schedule, guess who we get 2 times in the next 3 weeks? The Atlanta Falcons, who have been 31st against the pass so far this season. I think the worst team has been the Seattle Seahawks, who have just been horrible against the pass. So Jameis Winston, good schedule, will go down the field, has weapons. He's the guy I would take a look at as far as quarterbacks go. As far as running backs go, Salvin Ahmed from Miami Dolphins. What a revelation this guy has been. So he goes ahead and gets the bulk, and it's tough to find a running back or a player who's going to get a ton of touches at this point of the season, but he's going to get the bulk of the work. Jordan Howard, they apparently don't like and realize they made a mistake bringing him aboard. DeAndre Washington's a change of pace guy. Patrick Laird's there, but they know what they have in him. Matt Breida, he could be back, but I really think they like this kid. So, Ockman, he's a 3-year starter at Washington, was undrafted, had a horrible combine day, but was signed by San Francisco, who took a chance on him. Kyle Shanahan's the type of guy that will do that. Was waived, and then the Dolphins picked him up back in August. He's getting his chance now, getting the touches, so he would be a guy I would take a look at. We were just talking about the Chargers. Kalen Balaj, he's getting another chance there for the Chargers. Big guy, 6'2", 230 pounds. He's the guy who's going to get early down work. And I know Austin Eckler looks like he's going to come back. He posted this video of him running last week. And he's going to have his role, but it would make a lot of sense if going forward the Chargers used Balaj as the early down back, given his size, and then used Eckler as the change of pace guy. And then going back to the Thursday night game and talking about last Thursday night, Michael Pittman from the Indianapolis Colts. Like I said, T.Y. Hilton has done nothing so far this year. Pittman has the prototypical size and speed to be a number one type of wide receiver. 9 touches, 122 yards. One of those was a reverse. He ran for 21 yards. Got 8 targets in this game, 7 targets the game before. Was a little bit banged up earlier in the season. I think that he's the type of guy that I would take a look at. And then if you're looking for a tight end, Logan Thomas. We've seen Alex Smith. Back-to-back 300-yard games for Alex Smith. It's a great story, but he loves to throw those short passes. He loves to go to DJ McKissick out of the backfield. But Logan Thomas, he's tight end. He runs those short, intermediate, safe routes. Those are the type of routes that Alex Smith likes to throw to. So Logan Thomas, if you're looking at tight end, which if you don't have an elite guy, has been kind of a mess this year.
All right, Kevin, so if we're looking for a knockout survivor eliminator contest pool winner, where do you go this week?
Yeah, so this is pretty tough.
The Chargers playing the Jets.
Yeah, so that's probably where I would lean to go. Here's my hesitation there, though, is the Jets have had 2 weeks to prepare for this game, and the Chargers have been so up and down. Something interesting, the Chargers, I believe, have been within 9 points of every game this season, and outside of Pittsburgh, I don't think anybody else can say that. So it's still they have Pittsburgh. They're going up against Jacksonville. That's pretty much a slam dunk. Kansas City at Las Vegas. Look, Kansas City's coming off the bye, but Las Vegas has played much better, and John Gruden's done a much better job. So if
and the Raiders beat them in the last meeting.
Yeah, so if the Chargers are there, I'm using them. And chances are you haven't. Here's the problem, though. If you're in a knockout pool or a survivor pool, everybody's going to the Chargers this week. So you might want to take a look at a team that's got, like a 4-point spread, something like that. Then there's a lot of closer ones this week. You've got Baltimore at home. They're a favorite over Tennessee. I think they'll win that game. But, maybe take a look at a team like New Orleans. Cleveland's at home against Philadelphia. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles are that good. And Seattle's at home against Arizona. You might have used Seattle already. I think Seattle pulls that one out. I mean, to be honest, and I know I'm a Bills fan, so I'm biased, but really the Bills should have won that game, and I don't think Arizona's played as good as everybody's giving them credit for. So the only thing I guess I'm saying here is it's very obvious that everybody's going to take the Chargers this week. Sometimes you got to zig when everybody else is zagging. So think about that in your survivor pools. All
right, where can people find your coverage of the NFL and fantasy football, Kevin?
Yeah, this morning my waiver wire article will be up on rotowire.com. Sign up at rotowire.com/free for your 10-day trial. Or if you have a question about lineup, people are still doing trades, whatever, especially in dynasty leagues, sometimes now is the right time to make a move. KC Payne, PAYNE26 on Twitter. Follow me so I can DM you back, but rotowire.com/free or KC Payne, PAYNE26 on Twitter.
Kevin, we'll talk to you again next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Wade.
Have a good week.
This man got an intro, and then he got a revamped intro. We do what we can for this man as he does what he does for us. John McKechnie, NFL fantasy analyst, rotowire.com. You can find him on SiriusXM's Fantasy channel on Fridays and Saturdays as well, and on Twitter always at Johns_tailgate. You can text in your fantasy questions for John at 50857 on the Academy Sports and Outdoors text line. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great, and the intro gets better and better seemingly every week. So I don't know what I'm doing right, but I'm going to try to keep it up here.
I felt as though the last one didn't quite meet the standards, and when we upgraded, and so this one I think might stick for a while. So I'm happy about that. How's the weather up there? Because it is amazing right here in Florida.
Oh, you live in Florida, and you're calling your Wisconsin guy to make fun of him?
Well,
for the
no.
weather.
Last week I'm not. Last week you said it was so great. You were riding bicycles.
That's true. Yeah, it was nice that has unfortunately run out. So it's pretty frosty here. Yeah, it's looking like a Wisconsin around Thanksgiving time, like it usually does. So
okay.
The little hot streak we had last week is thing of the past now.
Well, I won't tell you about the high of 73 and clear skies then. We'll just move right past that for today. So I've made the case that Jameis Winston is going to open up the Saints offense and that it is actually going to get better. And I certainly believe that from a fantasy perspective. Do you?
I do. Drew Brees was among the bottom of the league as far as average depth of throw was concerned. I mean, it doesn't really take looking at all of Brees' stats to really know. I mean, you could get a pretty good, clear picture of how hard he was struggling just from watching his games this year. Yeah, his average depth of target is 5.8 yards. I mean, that's barely pushing the ball down the field whatsoever. I mean, Alvin Kamara being like the number one pass catcher for them, it says more about Brees than it does about Kamara. So having a legitimate, a guy equipped with a legitimate NFL arm like Jameis Winston at this stage, I think it can only serve to improve this passing game. The Saints already had the problem of not having that downfield threat, and then it was compounded by Drew Brees not being able to push the ball down the field. So now you at least have that threat to the defense. They're not shrinking the field on themselves the way that they were with Brees back there, or with those ridiculous Taysom Hill packages. So I'd say stock up for basically all of the Saints skill position guys now.
Is it concerning, though, that Michael Thomas now in his second game back, 2 catches, 27 yards? I mean, he did nothing. Is that a problem, or do you think that this Jameis Winston move and the fact that now he's got his legs under him, that maybe he'll start being Michael Thomas again?
I think Thomas has always been the biggest beneficiary from Drew Brees, and Brees kind of helped make Thomas like an optimal part of that offense, just because where he works tends to work best with where Brees can get the ball at this stage of his career. So that's why it's been so automatic to Thomas in recent years. I don't think Jameis is nearly as interested in just getting those little 5-6 yard returns. I mean, again, Michael Thomas, average depth of target is 8.6 yards, a relatively small sample size, and you expect his catch rate to jump back up. It's down under 60%. That won't last too long. But point remains, Thomas isn't the kind of guy that Winston really jived with during his time in Tampa Bay. Like, he liked to push the ball down the field. He liked to get it to Mike Evans, liked to get it to Chris Godwin down the seams. And Thomas doesn't really offer that so much. He's more of that short, intermediate passing game type of guy. So I don't think with Jameis being back that this automatically means that Michael Thomas is going to snap back into form. I wouldn't say that his arrow is pointing any further down than it was already with Brees back there, but I don't think that this necessarily unlocks anything for Thomas's fantasy value. And I know I did just say that it's arrow points up for most of these guys, but if you have Michael Thomas, you're not going to come even close to getting what you invested in from a first rounder. You know that from the injury, but I think also in these games down the stretch, I don't think that he's really going to be that guy that helps you win your league.
I think Michael Thomas owners just jumped off of whatever platform they were on just listening to that. Christian McCaffrey went from a guy that never gets hurt to a guy that now has 2 pretty serious injuries in the last 2 games that he's played. How much of a factor is this going to be for you as you look at him going into next year? Whenever he's on the field, the guy is amazing, and there's no questioning that. But now we look at Christian McCaffrey. One of the reasons why he was such a slam dunk number 1 overall is that not only was he great, he was also durable. Now you have to take that into account. Do you think he's going to slip at all in the consensus rankings going into next year?
I don't think so. I think you look at some of the way that the other top tier fantasy player or fantasy assets have performed this year. Zeke's been healthy for the most part, but he's been terrible. I think a lot of that has to do with team context. Obviously, Saquon Barkley will be coming off the more serious injury than McCaffrey with the ACL. So maybe McCaffrey goes number 3 next year, and we see some combination of Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara sitting at the top 2. But I don't think that McCaffrey is at risk of falling outside of the top 5. And it is funny how quickly narratives can change, because he was like the ultimate durable workhorse. I mean, getting 300 touches per season the last couple of years, and then and being able to handle it and seemingly thriving with it. And then he gets dinged up this year, and I don't think that he's going to quite get that injury-prone tag just yet. He's probably one injury away from it. But I think at this stage, it's a bit of a wash of a year for the McCaffrey investors, especially with him being the consensus number 1 pick. We haven't had a consensus number 1 guy like him in a little bit. So disappointing for this year, but I think going into next year, you should still have the utmost confidence in McCaffrey being one of the best fantasy assets you can possibly have.
We're talking to John McKechnie, NFL fantasy analyst at rotowire.com. The rookie wide receivers are balling out. Chase Claypool, Brandon Ayuk is now coming on strong. T. Higgins looks great. CeeDee Lamb looked really good before Dak got hurt. Justin Jefferson is in line for potentially winning Offensive Rookie of the Year. How impressive have these guys been to you? And is there one that you put above the fray and say that's the guy that's blowing me away the most? You were really big on Justin Jefferson. Credit to you prior to the season starting.
Right. So it's crazy that the first 2 receivers off the board didn't even get the mention right there.
Jerry Jeudy's been good too. That's crazy. Yeah. Jerry Jeudy's been.
And yep. So, I mean, it just speaks to the insane depth of this class. I think, it's something that we expected going into the draft, that this would be a difference maker class from multiple different guys. And, yes, the early returns, we're past the halfway point of the season. Jefferson, I would say, stands above the rest. But I think that we're about to see some other guys really come on strong late, some guys that might have been injured a little bit earlier in the season or just didn't have a clear path to a role. So while guys like Higgins, I think, is about to start really taking that next step. He did not look phased against Pittsburgh this past weekend. I think Jalen Reagor, there's just not a ton of receiving talent in Philadelphia opposite him. No one can really pose the deep threat that he does. So now that he's back from the thumb injury, I expect him to be a difference maker moving forward. And I'm very interested to see what Michael Pittman can do the rest of the way, because Indianapolis has really lacked a difference maker in the passing game, and it looks like he has some sort of rapport with Rivers right now. He has that athleticism to where you get him the ball in space, and he's able to make big plays out of it. So I look for some of these guys that maybe haven't made the biggest splashes just yet as rookies, really starting to come on here in the second half of the season.
Has Kyler Murray overtaken Patrick Mahomes and Russell Wilson as the fantasy quarterback to have? Is he now number 1 on the list?
I think for fantasy, yes. I still think that Mahomes and Wilson would be the guys I start my franchise with. Sure. But Murray's definitely in that discussion. But again, for fantasy, I mean, the dude is putting up ridiculous rushing production, and it doesn't even feel like it's the forefront of his game necessarily, or that he really even needs to do it. It's just an added bonus to what he does, because he's so surgical as a passer, and he's got those great weapons with Christian Kirk coming along, and obviously DeAndre Hopkins. So there's just so much around him, and he's getting the most out of all of those guys. And I think it's obviously a very quarterback-friendly system. So all of that leads to Kyler absolutely being the best fantasy quarterback this year. And, I think once we do take a look at the winning teams on ESPN and Yahoo at the end of the season, it'll be sort of like if you took Lamar Jackson last year. He was on such a high percentage of teams that ended up winning their league's championship. I bet you will see something very, very similar with Kyler Murray at the end of the year.
We're getting a few texts in about the San Francisco backfield. We'll get to those text messages in a moment. Rate the pickups with fire emojis. Let's keep it going. These are the guys that were popular on the waiver wires. You woke up early this morning and saw who you were able to scoop up. Jameis Winston, 1 to 5, 5 being amazing, 1 being I'm not so excited. Jameis Winston rated in fire emojis.
Let's go with 3. I'll play this one down the middle. We don't know how long he's going to be the starter for New Orleans. It becomes a 5-flame if he ends up starting for them the rest of the season, and the turnovers are mitigated in this new New Orleans system for him. But as it stands, 3 flames. He'll be a start-worthy guy every week that he has a job for the Saints, and you don't have a better option. So he kind of fits it in that mold. If you're dealing with bye weeks, if you're dealing with some quarterback attrition, then Winston becomes a solid but not great pickup.
This is the first guy off the wire in all of my leagues. Salvin Ahmed out of the Miami Dolphins.
We run into these running backs every year where they're thrust into this opportunity. You may not have heard of them too much during the pre-draft process. Ahmed, a guy that was solid at Washington but never really took off to the extent that maybe some people were expecting. So I know he's coming off the nice game going up against the Chargers, 21 carries, 85 yards, and the touchdown on top of it. I got to throw a little bit of cold water on it, though. I think that Miami is going to continue to have a very difficult backfield to figure out, and while he might be the guy for a week or two, I don't think that this is a sustainable one. I think that we're going to continue to see muddled workload distributions. So maybe I'll be wrong on this one, but for now I got to give it a 2. 2 flames for Salvin.
2. Okay, there you go. Let's end with MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who blew up last week for the Packers. This is a guy I feel like is on a roster, and then he's probably one of the most added and dropped players over the course of the entire season.
I think I'm starting to eat my words on him because I never bought it with him. And then when Alan Lazard went out earlier this year, I was like, okay, like he's going to get more opportunities, but he catches less than half of his passes. Like I just have a hard time trusting this guy on a consistency basis, especially in PPR formats. But for his lack in target floor, he does have a nice ceiling. I mean, he's a very athletic guy, and obviously when he gets targets, he's way down the field. I mean, his average depth to target like north of 17 yards. So he's a bit of a boomer or bust guy. We know that at this point. If you picked him up, I think that you can give him a 3 flame. I don't think that he's consistent enough to warrant a 4 or a 5, but I got to give him enough respect to put him above a 1 or a 2.
Would it be fair then to say, I was going to ask about Michael Pittman, but we already talked about him. Would you give him a 5? Would he be a 5er?
He would be a 4, and the only reason he's not a 5 is because Phillip Rivers is his quarterback, and that's a limiting factor in my opinion.
That might actually, I feel like Michael Pittman's a little bit of the Michael Thomas ilk, and that Phillip Rivers is kind of like Drew Brees at this point, where he can only throw the ball 7 yards down the field. So it could actually work out.
Parallel.
Right. Kind of feels like that. All right, let's answer a couple of questions and get you out of here. Good day. Needs a flex. James Robinson. They wrote Joe Robinson, but I don't think you want to start him. Let's go with James Robinson, Will Fuller, Ronald Jones, Joe Mixon.
Just one of these
Just
guys?
one. Yep.
I think I'm still kind of scared off of Mixon's injury, so I think for me it's James Robinson. He just has like the highest touch floor out of any of those guys, and he's such a huge part of that Jags offense, so I'll take him even in a tough matchup.
We got 2 people that are basically the rest of the texts are just, can you tell me please what's going on with the 49ers backfield? Can you start Raheem Mostert with confidence? Is he going to return soon? What's the read on what's going on with San Francisco?
Yeah, that's been a mess, and they're on bye, so we're looking ahead to week 12. They'll be going up against the Rams. I think that Mostert is on track to be ready for that game, and we have both Tevin Coleman and McKinnon on the injury report as well. I think if Mostert gets activated next week, he takes back over that primary role for the 49ers. But you have to know that it's a very fluid situation. It's going to be tough to pin down. It's definitely one of those tougher ones to figure out for fantasy purposes. I do like Mostert the best once he's healthy, and I do think he will be back by the 49ers next game. But you have to understand that, he's going to lose carries to guys that you don't think he should, just because that's kind of the way that the 49ers and that backfield tend to function. But if I'm power ranking it, Mostert is that number 1 guy.
He is John McKechnie. RotoWire.com is where you can find his stuff, and on Twitter at Johns_tailgate. Enjoy that frigid weather up there, John, and we'll catch up next week. Good luck this weekend.
Yep, got the flannel on, so I'm ready to rock. Talk to you next week.
All right, man. Thanks. He's got the flannel. He's got.
Oh, we appreciate you listening. Trust me, I do. I do. Once you get through the, hey, check out Be Positive on CBS Thursdays on the radio.com app, and then got some guy singing about the Astros. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I'm Bart Winkler. Ryan Horvat will be on the big show today hosting. Sam Schmitz is here. He'll have your tweets. Tweet us, 1250 AM The Fan. Use the hashtag AskKevin. You can also call in, 414-799-1250. Kevin Payne, rotowire.com on the Great Midwest Bank hotline. All right, so let me present it to you this way. There was a while, I've gotten over this, but there was a while where, because I'm a Packer fan, I would never roster Russell Wilson. As a Bills fan, are you trying to stay away from Kyler Murray now?
So I just got out of my bedroom where I've been curled up in the fetal position since Sunday.
Brutal.
Tough game. But I tell you this, and I said this before, the Bills had a rough two-game stretch against that NFC West. It was Seahawks and then the Cardinals, and I said if they go 1-1 in these two games, I'll be happy. So that's what they did, and I think they'll regroup. They should have won the game. The one kind of resonating factor, and I think all teams in the league should take note of what happened at the end of that game, was have your tallest player out there. The Bills have a wide receiver, Gabriel Davis, who's 6'4", 6'5". Have that guy out there. Tre'Davious White's a fantastic cornerback. Don't get me wrong, but I think he's like 5'11". Get somebody tall to go ahead and bat out there. My father loves telling the story of there was a team that was going to sign Wilt Chamberlain to block field goals and stand in front of the uprights and just bat the ball down when the ball came. So, it's tough. But Kyler Murray's a fantastic player, and all these rushing touchdowns, good Lord. He's going to be really payback owners that took him in the third and fourth rounds this season.
Tweet in your questions, 1250 AM The Fan. You can also call 799-1250. Kevin Payne giving us his time to give you fantasy football help. Let's start with Tom and Franklin. Tom, what's up?
Good morning, guys. Tight end question, non-PPR, Mark Andrews or Eric Ebron?
Yeah, Ebron had a great matchup last week. Should have really done more. And overall, tight end has been a mess this year. You've got the Kittle injury. Really, Kelsey's been the big guy. There's been a mess in Philadelphia with Goddard and Zach Ertz. I'm going to say stick with Andrews, though, in this one. He still has the confidence of Lamar Jackson, and I think he had a long reception called back due to penalty last week. So I'm going to say at home, go with Andrews over Ebron.
Kyler Murray is rewarding owners. Lamar Jackson is not.
No, he's not. No idea what's going on. I think they are really looking at shutting him down near the goal line. The last few games I've watched him, and when he runs the read option, he's keeping the ball. He's trying to get it in the end zone, but just really hasn't been able to do that on a consistent basis or as consistently as he did last year. I thought he'd be doing better in the passing game. That really hasn't evolved. So, yeah, I'm getting lineup questions each week about Lamar Jackson, which last season was a no-brainer. You just put him in your lineup. Not necessarily the case these days.
John is in Kenosha. John, what's going on?
Hey, guys. I got a question. Quarterback Allen's on bye this week. I can go with Alex Smith, Jameis Winston, or Kirk Cousins. I need one of those. And I know Alex Smith threw 55 times last week. What do you got for me?
Yeah, but no touchdowns, which is kind of a weird stat. He loves to check it down. He loves to go to McKissick out of the backfield. Logan Thomas is running those short and intermediate routes. I'm going to say go with Jameis. Here's what we know about Jameis. Jameis is going to throw interceptions. He might throw multiple interceptions, but he's going to try and go downfield. He's kind of a lot like, I think his mentality is a lot like Ryan Fitzpatrick. They're going to go ahead and push the ball downfield and take chances. That's what Michael Thomas needs. That's what Traquan Smith needs. So I think we're going to see some bigger plays out of this offense rather than watching Drew Brees throw the Kamara out of the backfield every down. So I'm going to say go with Jameis. Atlanta's pass defense is terrible. Yes, they're coming off the bye. They've had an extra week to prepare. But Jameis gets Atlanta 2 of the next 3 weeks. And this issue with Brees' rib,
And I don't think he's going to be back in the next couple of weeks. So I like Jameis in both these matchups when he's going to go ahead and face the Falcons.
We entertain conspiracy theories on this show. We think that Drew Brees got benched last week.
It would not surprise. There's no arm strength. There isn't. When these quarterbacks get to a certain point, they fall off a cliff, which is why Brady, who's older and doing what he's doing, is absolutely amazing. But think back to like Joe Montana on the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, when these guys fall off a cliff, they fall off a cliff. And Michael Thomas, if I'm his owner, you're not making the fantasy playoffs because, number one, he's been hurt. And number two, when he's been on the field, there's no production. They can't get him the ball down the field because Breeze is back there. So maybe this is a changing of the guard. Maybe they're going to see what they have with Jameis from here in the rest of the season to see if he's going to be their quarterback of the future.
Rob is in Pewaukee, 799-1250, Rob.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I need 2 of these 5 in a PPR. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Antonio Gibson, Ronald Jones, Christian Kirk, and Jacoby Myers.
And Jacoby Myers. Myers is a great quarterback. Just because he had that touchdown pass last week. But anyways, no, I was kind of high on Myers. He's the number one guy. N'Keal Harry really hasn't emerged. I mean, he was a first-round pick, and that was one of the worst picks probably the Patriots have ever made. But anyways, let's go with Ronald Jones. I know it's not the greatest matchup at home, but we've got a healthy over-under at 56.5, which means they expect a lot of points on both sides of the football. And then I'm going to say go with Gibson against Cincinnati. He's at home. They look like a much better team than they played at home so far this season. So let's go Gibson and Ronald Jones out of those 5.
Sam, give me four tweets from the people out there.
All right, first one. This one's from Andy. This is a PPR league. He says he just needs one, Deontay Johnson or Justin Jefferson.
I think at this point you got to go with Justin Jefferson.
Sounds good. This one's from L on Twitter. He says, ask Kevin, Kalen Ballage or James Robinson PPR?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to say Ballage because James Robinson has arguably the worst matchup this week going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right, another one on Twitter from Matt using the hashtag #AskKevin. Would you start Tom Brady or Big Ben this week?
Ooh, that's a good one. And Ben seems to get hurt each and every game, but somehow he's like the bionic man. He somehow stays in the game.
Yeah, hurt. Yeah. Ben gets hurt every game. Ben throws a pick and suddenly his pinky hurts. Come on.
Yeah, there we go. Bart's a fan, obviously. I'm going to say between those two, I'm going to go with Brady in this one. I actually think that Jacksonville pulls the upset off. I mean, at some point Pittsburgh's got to lose, and I think 10 points to lay on the road is too much. But I actually think Jacksonville, I'll call it right now, I think they're going to upset the Steelers this week.
All right, last one for this portion right here from Jake on Twitter. He says PPR just needs one for his flex. He needs either Duke Johnson or Nyheim Hines.
Yeah, let's not get fooled by that Nyheim Hines game. I would go with Duke Johnson here. Look, Nyheim Hines, look at the box scores for the whole year. Jordan Wilkins isn't going anywhere. Jonathan Taylor's not going anywhere. And I really wonder if the Colts just decide to go with whoever has the hot hand. Last week it was Hines. Who knows what it's going to be this week, but I don't think all of a sudden you've got every down back in Nyheim Hines. So don't get overexcited with them. I would go with Duke Johnson.
You think Jacksonville's going to beat Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I do. I'll be taking the money line on that.
I think Jacksonville had their game last week, and now they're going to come out flat.
At some point, I just think that Pittsburgh, they're laying all these points. They're going to have a letdown game. If you were Pittsburgh and you're heading down to Jacksonville, don't you think this is going to be a walk in the park that you just got to show up and you're going to win? So I think there's that kind of mentality. Probably what I'll do now that gambling is legal and it's okay, I'll probably take the Jaguars plus the 10.5 points, whatever it is, and then sprinkle like 25% or whatever I could do on that on the money line.
Let's go to Tim in Brookfield. Tim, what's happening?
Hey, guys, thanks for taking my call. It's a PPR league. I need 2 out of these 5. I got Murray from the Saints, Tyler Boyd, Gus Edwards, Thielen, and Josh Kelly.
Edwards, Thielen, and Kelly. Yeah, and I know Thielen until this last game the other night hadn't done much, but I think you stick with him, especially against the Cowboys. Cowboys are nothing special on defense. And then I would go with Tyler Boyd. I know he's had some off games, but still each and every week I feel like, and T. Higgins has been fantastic for the Bengals, but I still feel like Tyler Boyd's kind of that experienced veteran. He is the main guy there. It's definitely not A.J. Green anymore, so I would go with Boyd and Thielen out of those 5 in PPR.
Let's get to Tony is in Cudahy. Tony.
Hey, gentlemen, I got a running back question for you. First of all, is Elliott from Dallas even worth starting anymore?
Oh.
And I need 2 out of these 3. Gus Edwards, Elliott, Robinson from Jacksonville, or McKissick from Washington. Thanks for your time. I'll listen.
Yeah, so I think if it's PPR, I think you go with McKissick at this point. I mean, he's a lock each and every week for like 5 catches out of the backfield, as I said earlier. They love to go ahead and check down to him. Elliott, watch. His hamstring's been a little bit bulky. He did practice yesterday, but he started out with the trainer, and then he went with his teammates. He says it's something he's going to have to deal with day in and day out. It is pretty tough to trust him, but I just look at the ceiling. Would it surprise you if he went for 130 yards this week and 2 touchdowns? No, I don't know that you could say that about the other running backs. So I would go with McKissick, especially if it's PPR, and then Ezekiel Elliott, I would still go ahead and stick with him just because he's got such a high ceiling.
John is in Oak Creek. What do you got, John?
Okay, yeah, I have a PPR question, running back. I would choose between Leonard Fournette or Malcolm Brown. Monday night games.
Yeah, and Brown doesn't have the greatest matchup because that is a tough run defense there in Tampa. And then on the other side of the football, it's interesting you got the same game. Fournette, look, Ronald Jones is still the main guy. I mean, he can screw up, he can drop a pass, he can fumble, and to his credit, Bruce Arians has gone back to him. So I'm going to say Malcolm Brown because they like using him near the goal line. He usually gets into the end zone. So Malcolm Brown over Leonard Fournette this week.
Sam, give me 3 more tweets, and then we'll bid adieu.
All right, this one's from Brewman on Twitter using the hashtag AskKevin. He says he just needs 1 out of these 3 wide receivers. It is a non-PPR league. He says Calvin Ridley, A.J. Brown, or Amari Cooper.
Brown or Cooper? Gosh, and Brown's got a tough matchup. It's not Cooper because Dalton's back, and I have no idea which of those 3 wide receivers is going to have the big game. Maybe none of them. A.J. Brown's pretty close to – I think I'm going with A.J. Brown. We don't even know if Ridley's going to play. He still has his foot injury, and he's been limited at practice. We still don't know if he's going to play. So even though it's a tough matchup, I would go with A.J. Brown.
All right, another one here on Twitter. This one's from Alex. He says, Joe Burrow this week or Matt Stafford?
Burrow at the Washington team or Stafford, who's dealing with a thumb injury. He's supposedly going to play through it. It's supposedly not a big deal. That seems a little risky to me. So for that fact, I'm going to go with Joe Burrow or for Stafford.
All right, another one. This one's from BJ on Twitter. He says he just needs 2. This is a PPR format as well. Jonathan Taylor, Duke Johnson, Chris Godwin, or Antonio Brown.
Or AB. We all want to use Antonio Brown, but has he done anything yet? Who was the third guy? Taylor, Duke, Brown, and who was the third guy?
Sam's on the phone now.
Oh, is he? Okay. I think whoever was the third guy.
Fine. I'm not sure. Well-oiled machine.
I think the third guy was...
Who was the third guy that you said?
Chris Godwin.
Godwin.
Godwin. There we go. Good. I'm glad you said that because he's going to be one of the guys I take. I would go with Godwin. And definitely Duke Johnson. As long as David Johnson's going to be out, he's on IR right now, I think Duke Johnson's going to be a must-start basically every week, especially in PPR because he can catch passes out of the backfield.
Kevin, tell me about the happenings at rotowire.com.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff going on. We're starting to transition into different sports as hopefully they get played. We've got a lot of coverage from the NBA draft from last night. Every week you can find my waiver wire article on Tuesday morning. Friday, FanDuel article from me. Saturday, sports betting article from me. Rotowire.com/free to sign up for a free 10-day trial. And if we didn't get to your question today, hit me up. Follow me on Twitter so I can DM you back if you've got any questions at Casey Payne, Payne 26.
Do you think Bogdanovich will be a Buck?
Do I think? I don't know. That's a little bit
I do. I feel good.
You do?
Yeah.
You know, I think you guys will like him there. He's pretty consistent, and I think you guys will like him if he does end up there. I just kind of curious as to what is actually going on behind the scenes in that whole situation.
I'll tell you what's going on. Pat Riley got pissed, and he called Adam Silver to complain.
Well,
that's what's going
on. Sometimes that happens. Yep, sometimes that happens.
All right, Kevin, enjoy the bye week. That means a full week of Red Zone for you with no Bills. So we will talk to you next week.
Okay, sounds good.
Oh, what day you want to do next week?
Oh, it's up to you. Thank you very much, because I used to sit by my phone on Thanksgiving and wonder if Wicket was going to call me or not.
Wicket sucks.
Now we know. You know what? Probably Friday's better.
Friday?
I'll have a little more information, but I don't know. We could do Wednesday, too, because we've got all those games on Turkey Day. So it's completely up to you, and I actually would be willing to do Thanksgiving morning as well. So maybe we'll talk off the air and figure out what.
No, let's do Wednesday.
You want to do Wednesday? Okay, we will do Wednesday morning then.
Okay, I'll talk to you Wednesday. Don't.
And welcome back to the KD Love Sports Wrap 1340, the station you can count on. Thursday morning, rather. I'm getting ahead of myself. Looking forward to this Thursday night game. We've got K-Trade on the phone from RotoWire and RotoWire.com. Good morning, K-Trade.
Good morning, Zeke. I'm excited for both Week 11, and tonight's excellent Thursday night matchup.
Yeah, the second consecutive week we've had a good Thursday night matchup. Shocking. We've got the Cardinals and the Seahawks both atop the NFC West, 6-3. After that, the electrifying win last week for Arizona. One up in your guy Stephon Diggs, who thought he had the game-winning touchdown with 31 seconds left. And then, boom, DeAndre Hopkins out of nowhere winning the game for the Cardinals. What are we watching fantasy-wise tonight when it comes to this Thursday? Probably a lot of guys going. The thing I'm curious about the most is the Seattle backfield. What's the status there?
Ooh, well, I'd say here, bigger picture, fantasy folks love tonight's game. Huge over-under of 57 points, which I agree with. Two great offenses and some mediocre defenses. The running back situation, as it's been the last few weeks, looking dicey for Seattle, though at least trending in the right direction. Chris Carson is going to be a game-time decision, so we really don't know until tonight if he's on your roster. You're going to want to check in about 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central Time. Carlos Hyde, limited but practicing this week, so it looks like he could return. Travis Homer is out. Dallas didn't get much run last week. It was expected, and they picked up Andre Collins, who you might remember from his old Ravens days, and Collins was suddenly their lead back last week. So total mess, but I do think it's going to be Carson or Hyde, just depending on who the heck's healthy. It does seem like Hyde has the advantage health-wise, and he's a good free agent pickup if out there.
What about that Seattle offense? Defense for Seattle has struggled, needless to say, these last handful of weeks. Anybody worth having on the Seattle team against the Arizona D tonight?
Against the Arizona D, well, the concern here is Tyler Lockett and his questionable knee issues, so that could be an even more insane target number for DK Metcalf. Of course, if you have Metcalf on your roster, you can plan him every week.
Yep.
Even though he got bounced around a little by Jalen Ramsey, the Rams star cornerback last week, where Metcalf put up a pedestrian 2 catches, 28 yards. But, I think what's really interesting is just how bad the Seattle defense has been. They're giving up the most fantasy points a game to quarterbacks, and DeAndre Hopkins could just explode tonight. I wouldn't be shocked if this far exceeds the over-under, hits the mid-60s, and Murray and Hopkins just win you a fantasy game this week.
Diving more into to fantasy injuries, what's the latest on Christian McCaffrey and some other big names there?
Yeah, McCaffrey, a no-go in Week 11, so we're going to see more Mike Davis as their lead back, though he's been a little inconsistent after a hot start. Also in Carolina, Teddy Bridgewater is questionable. Vegas hasn't put a line out for that game because his knee issue, we're not sure whether or not he's going to play. We talked about the messy situation in Seattle's running backfield. Drew Brees is going to miss at least 2 weeks for the Saints. He's got rib, lung, and shoulder injuries.
Fantastic.
So Jameis Winston, Winston's a big free agent option. But hey, some good news. Andy Dalton expected to return Sunday for the Cowboys.
Well, that's
Who
not
is
good.
it? Your Vikings.
That's not
Not
good
sure
news.
It matters one way or the other.
We
but,
were
you know.
hoping to see some Ben DiNucci this weekend. I want to see Andy Dalton. I want Ben
Everybody
DiNucci.
wants to see some Ben DiNucci. So I'm blanking. It wasn't even DiNucci last week. It was that kid they got off the waiver wire. Oh, I'm blanking on his name. But anyway, it's going to be Dalton this week. Assuming he, as expected, he passes the last COVID-19 testing. So, with a beat-up offensive line, Dalton can't run like Dak Prescott. I know everyone wants to dump on Andy Dalton for being an aging veteran, but if your line isn't blocking for you and Zeke isn't picking up the blitzes, every pass is, a step and a half and then chuck it. That's not a recipe for success.
Fans, you can get a 10-day trial of RotoWire by going to rotowire.com/win. K-Train, what are some perks of getting that RotoWire subscription?
We rank every position every week. For instance, we've got Andy Dalton, the QB 16 this week. 15 NFL articles per week. Our daily lineup optimizer for NFL and every other daily fantasy sport. And our coverage across 13-plus sports. We got to get ready for fantasy basketball season. With your T-Wolves making a lot of moves, Zeke.
Yeah, getting Anthony Edwards #1 overall, Ricky Rubio back in town. I was excited to see that the Wolves drafted Daniel Oturu, but then they traded him to the Knicks, and then he was subsequently traded to the Clippers. So I think that's where he landed eventually last night. But the big story: 4 Minnesota Preps kids taken in the top 41 picks. That's never happened before.
Nice. Well, in Oturu, they need another big to be alongside Wall. So. A little odd on all those trades, but overall, definitely T-Wolves seem to be trending in the right direction.
We've been saying that for 30 years, K-Train. Don't give me that. It's back to the NFL.
I'm sure Rubio will turn it around.
Exactly.
Baby.
Well, he didn't the first time, so we'll see what happens this time. Any free agents in mind for NFL Week 11? What are some big pickups people should be looking for?
Yeah, Kalen Ballage of the Chargers somehow available on 51% of leagues, at least when I checked last night, which is crazy since he's currently their lead back with all the injuries they've had and facing a terrible Jets defense. So look for Kalen Ballage. If you need a QB, we mentioned Jameis Winston. He's starting for the Saints probably for multiple weeks with Breeze's injury.
Mm-hmm.
And then here's a sneaky move. If you're in an ESPN fantasy football league, Taysom Hill is still eligible at tight end, even though he's probably going to do maybe a quarter of the snaps at quarterback, especially in the red zone for the Saints. Tight end's been a bit of a wasteland this season. So if you're in an ESPN league, roll the dice on Taysom Hill for the Saints. Another running back option, look for Salvon Ahmed in Miami. It's spelled Ahmed, A-H-M-E-D, but pronounced Ahmed, former Washington Husky. He was their lead back last week, and it looks like he should be their lead back for at least one more week until Myles Gaskin returns for the Dolphins. Remember, they cut Jordan Howard, so lots of carries to be had for the surprisingly successful Dolphins.
Speaking of surprisingly successful, how about those Vikings? 3 in a row?
You like that?
We do like that. We're not sure because we were losing games left and right the first 6. We were 1-5 heading into the bye, and now we've won 3 straight division games.
Oh,
and
it's you think
getting
of those losses. I know they should have beat Seattle. That was ridiculous.
Yes, if you take away one play from Seattle and one play from Tennessee, Vikings are 6-3 right now, and that's how things work out here.
Well, and frankly, expanded playoff situation. So if you're terrible the first half of the season and turn it on for the second, you're just fine. So hey, I think Viking fans, whoever jumped off the bandwagon, needs to get back on.
Plenty of room. There's always plenty of room on the Vikings bandwagon.
Hey, now that said, I'm sure the Vikings defense would love to face a punchless Chicago offense every week. That unfortunately doesn't happen. But hey, the Cowboys are pretty hobbled. Nice opponent for Week 11, so I think it's going to be 4 wins in a row. Heck, you guys are 7.5-point favorites.
Wow.
And you know what? Specifically, let's give some fantasy love to Justin Jefferson.
Mm-hmm.
Since Week 3, the rookie ranks ninth in fantasy points a game with 12.7 a game, ahead of Detroit Lake's own Adam Thielen. Though Thielen not too shabby himself. He's since Week 3 at 16th at 11.7 points per week. So really looking like a dynamic wide receiver setup. And frankly, every time you see Jefferson line up, I'm surprised you even remember the name Stephon Diggs.
Exactly. Oh, you mean the guy who's leading the NFL in receiving yards right now, Stephon Diggs? Is that one?
Well, they are, and the Bills' passing offense is number 1 in the league. So
That's true.
Yeah,
That
that's
helps.
going well as well.
Anybody worry you heading into Week 11?
The Tennessee Titans worry me in general. They got shut down by that excellent Indianapolis defense, only giving up 17 points last week. And now they face maybe an even tougher defense, the Baltimore Ravens. They lead the league with only 18.3 points allowed per game. You know, if you own Derrick Henry, you got to play him, but he's only averaging 12 fantasy points per game, which for him is pretty low. You'll still take it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Titans really miss injured left tackle Taylor Lewin, big knee injury. He's out for the year. So, I don't know. They worry me. There's so many other injured running backs. I don't know how you deal Henry. But certainly if you've got Tannehill, the arrow might be pointing down for Ryan, and you may want to think about other QB options. We've got Tannehill at QB 19, for instance, this week against the Ravens.
Fans, remember you can get that free 10-day trial of RotoWire by going to rotowire.com/win. K-Train, thanks again for the time. We'll chat again. What are you doing next Wednesday? Should we have a call Wednesday since next Thursday? I'm sure you're busy. I'm busy Thanksgiving-wise.
Wednesday would be great if you're game for it.
Let's do it.
Please text me whenever the T-Wolves sign up power forward.
Okay, yeah. You'll be waiting for a while.
All right, Zeke, we'll talk again next week. Happy Thanksgiving. Well, or happy weekend.